Welcome to FounderLine, the show where we answer your questions about startups. I'm your host, Joe Beninato. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. Our goal with FounderLine is to provide a place where startup founders can come and get their questions about startups answered. And usually we have an experienced entrepreneur and investor who's going to help us out with that. Maybe you're a founder who's working through an issue in your company. Maybe you're thinking about starting a company. Maybe you're an employee at a startup and you want to ask questions about what's happening at your startup. Maybe you just got a job offer and you want to know more about, what should I look for when I'm thinking about joining a company. For any of those issues, this is the place to come. You can ask your questions and we'll see if we can help you out. This is a live show, so we're bound to make a few mistakes, and we need you to participate. So if you have a question, call us. The phone number is 1-844-4FOUNDER. That's 844-436-8633. Or you can email us. The email address is help@founderline.com. Or you can tweet at us. It's @FounderLine. If you want to ask a question anonymously, you can go to our website, and there's a form where you can submit a question there as well. With that, let's get started today. Our guest is Robert Stevens, who's the founder of the Geek Squad and former CTO of Best Buy. Robert and I met when he was still in Minneapolis working at Best Buy, and we've since become great friends. He recently moved from Minnesota after living there for many years, moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And Robert, it's great to have you. Thank you for joining us on FounderLine.
Good to see you, Joe.
Thanks for coming down. So usually what I do to start off the show, just to give people a little bit more of a sense of your background and like what you're doing, I'll ask a few questions just to go through your life history. Hopefully not in too much detail, but one of the first things I remember about when we first met you is I'm originally from Chicago. You're from Chicago as well, and I remember you telling me that you're kind of part artist, part technologist, and it's very interesting how those two things go together. But I remember something about the Art Institute and being in Chicago. So maybe walk us through sort of your early days in Chicago, how you ended up at the Art Institute, and we'll take it from there.
Well, I don't know, ever since I was a kid, one week I'd want to build a robot after watching Star Wars. Next week I'd want to, write a play but charge admission for it underneath my porch or my backyard. And in high school, in the 80s in high school, there were Apple IIs, maybe. Yep. So there's some programming classes like Fortran and Basic, but eventually you'd run out of what the school could teach you. So I did all the computer classes I could, and when I was a senior, I had an extra elective, and I followed a pretty girl down the hall in the art class, and I looked around, and I was like, there's a lot more girls in art than there are in computers, so that's basically how I ended up in art school. And then I went to art school and realized that I didn't want to be a starving artist, and so I went back into computers, and I've been going back and forth ever since. So, Geek Squad is partially my answer. The problem of an artist is that, there's always a tension between your work and your craft and making money and paying the rent.
Yep.
It's not unlike that for a company. The things that a company might do or what it's known for might not be the parts where it makes its money, and there's always tension there too. So it's always a paradox, and good brands, I think, are really clear about that. Sometimes a brand can't engage in things even though it would make money because it would violate their values. I think Apple is a good example of this.
Yeah.
So Geek Squad's my answer to what if an artist ran a company. I don't even consider Geek Squad a technology company because Geek Squad, with the exception of writing its own dispatch algorithms and software, it really works on other people's products, provides service. It's essentially the Genius bar for the Android ecosystem and Apple and Windows and pretty much everything else.
How did that come about? I seem to recall, you were still in school and, with a couple $100, decided to get started. So what led to that? Were you fixing other people's computers and doing that on your own, and then said, hey, we should turn this into something, or how did it happen?
When I was 6 years old, my brother, used to work on Volkswagen Beetles and bring home carburetors at night, and I'd take them apart while, watching TV, and I was fixing TVs and VCRs in high school and lawnmowers and anything, and I just loved taking stuff apart. I wish Make Magazine had been around when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
So it's 1994. Netscape is literally like 3 months old. And as soon as I saw the web browser, as soon as I saw Mosaic, I thought, if I can learn how the web works, I won't ever have to worry about whether or not I get a degree or not. And
you were still in college at this point?
Yeah, I'd moved to the University of Minnesota to study computer science.
Okay.
I think all of us that saw the web browser then knew what was going to happen in terms of APIs and devices and mobile devices and stuff like that. So I was going to do what a lot of people did, which is do web programming, charge $200-300 an hour and
build
write
websites
software.
for people.
Yeah,
and
write software, do server-side stuff. But I didn't know anything about equity, or I didn't have any money, and I didn't want to raise venture capital until I knew more about how good I was at business. So I just did my mountain bike in between computer science classes on the campus of the University of Minnesota. Doing Dell Computer had just started, but they didn't have any stores and they had no service.
Right.
So I was essentially, Dell used to actually refer people to Geek Squad, as we expanded. And so even like stuff you buy on eBay now, it's still kind of, Geek Squad's one of the only places that'll, make a house call. So I didn't want to get into that boring business of computer repair. I wanted to do the more glamorous stuff of software. But, one thing I've learned is that all the smart, beautiful people go into, design and sexy apps and stuff like that. But the world is populated mainly by boring-ass businesses, car washes, plumbing. That's where I think the real opportunities are to apply some of the new technology. So I fell in love with dispatch software and algorithms, and all the boring parts of the business became really interesting. So,
and it was you, and was there anybody else, or you just started hiring like-minded people to join you and pursue the mission together? Or?
Yeah, the way I got my start, I had a few handful of customers, but I became friends with these two guys who back then, they were just Apple resellers. This is 8 years before Apple had stores. Yeah. And so they were just selling Macs to ad agencies, doing Quark Express, Adobe Illustrator, and all, ad agencies tend to spend a lot of money on Macs. And so I was like their service arm, so they would just refer people to me. So I didn't have to deal with hardware, inventory. I focus only on service. And so that made a difference years later. The reason a lot of people suck at service is because when you derive some part of your revenue from like hardware sales, the service becomes an afterthought, and it can corrupt your values. Because my revenue only came from service, I relied solely on my reputation. I didn't have hardware sales to fall back on. So in some sense, it simplified the business, but in another sense, it forced me to create really high quality. And so most people don't know that Geek Squad was around 8 years before I acquired Best Buy. And Geek Squad will be 20 years old next week.
Wow, that's amazing. And you must be incredibly proud of the brand and the legacy that you built. Like that's a great American success story.
I think that I'm proud that it's still around. I think when a founder sells a company, I think
bad things happen.
They could happen. I talked to a lot of founders before I sold. I talked to a lot of founders before I started a company to find out what's the best way to start it, and should I sell my business or not. For me, the metric is if a founder or company sells itself, the metric shouldn't be how much money they got up front. The metric should also be 10 years later, was the deal a good deal for the acquirer? Was the deal a good thing for the company? Did the employees do okay? And I feel really good on all those fronts. Geek Squad has much bigger capabilities, 25,000 employees. It definitely has enhanced Best Buy service. There's always room to grow. As Geek Squad has gotten larger, it's like being a large airline. Stuff's going to happen, but like home automation alone is a huge opportunity. Wearable computing, robotics, these are the new categories we'll probably see. But a lot of the employees are still there. They have great benefits plans, and these are employees. They're not 1099'd and being kind of squeezed on their margins. So I feel very good about how, Geek Squad's doing okay, and Best Buy, it's a big part of, I think the newest CEO of Best Buy said it's one of the most important parts of their strategy. So, yeah.
And I think it's very rare for, after an acquisition, for a founder to stick around as long as you did. That almost never happens out here in Silicon Valley. I've lived through a bunch of those, and you're lucky if you make it a year or two. And so for you stayed, 10 years afterwards? Is that right?
10 years to the day almost. It was mainly out of spite because...
Who were you spiting?
other founders, because I would talk to founders and be like, I have two choices. I either can take 20 years to grow this brand on my own, with no capital and just by myself, or I can accelerate that. And I was 29 years old. I had been running Geek Squad for 8 years. I just didn't want to wait till I was, 49 to get there.
Yeah.
And I thought, for my first company, I can accelerate the scale. And it's a hard business. That's why there aren't 10 Geek Squads. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, I thought of that idea," and there's a million little ones in the yellow pages, but there's nobody with more than 10 or 20 employees. Essentially, it's a very hard business. It becomes easier when you're inside a retailer like Best Buy, and I knew they were going to be number one. If you remember, Computer City, CompUSA, I knew they were all going to go out of business. Their stores were a mess. Best Buy stores were cleaner and brighter, and they did all their own advertising, so it was a lot of DIY culture there.
Yeah.
So that's how.
Great. Well, one of my favorite things about the Geek Squad is the uniform, and I know we've talked about this in the past, but share with everybody the origins of the Geek Squad uniform.
Yeah. Oh, I just realized I didn't answer your last question. So, why did I stay? I talked to founders, and I'd be like, most founders leave after a year and a half. And I'd say, why'd you leave? And I'd either hear, oh, the corporation was an idiot and they screwed everything up, or I got really bored. And I thought, I don't want to just be like everybody else. So spite, I believe, is a huge motivator for people and everything in society. And so I don't like to be like everybody else. So I thought, why can't you have your cake and eat it too? Why can't we have the nimbleness that comes with being a startup, but leverage, especially in tech support? We all saw what happened to Sony. They used to be number one in the 80s in design and products and innovation. Microsoft, in the 90s was better than Apple until OS X came along. And I thought I could help these companies. I couldn't get to them at Geek Squad, but once I became an officer at Best Buy, I thought I could use that to improve Best Buy's experience. In many respects, I did good with Geek Squad. I didn't make all the impact I wanted. I really wanted to help the industry. I wanted to make return policies easier. I knew HP was going to struggle. When HP bought WebOS, I wanted to tell them, you have a shot at creating a third ecosystem. I failed in underestimating the lack of curiosity. I thought all these big shot Fortune 100 executives knew a lot. So the bad news is they don't. The good news is they don't, which means founders and people who are thinking about starting a company, I'm here to tell you what I saw after 10 years inside a big company is that there's plenty of room to disrupt them. And it's one thing to disrupt a business, but to also know that the leadership, most people in leadership right now aren't thinking digitally, they're not being curious, and that's really going to be the real threat, is that they don't, I've seen a lot of executives still have BlackBerries and they're proud of it. When they don't realize that if you don't think like a modern consumer on all the tools they have, then you can evaluate strategies in the boardroom. So, but I stuck with it because we were growing Geek Squad globally and getting into like home theater and mobile. So it kept me busy, but and now I feel like I have the knowledge of bootstrapping a startup with no money, growing it globally, and the knowledge of a big company. And so my next deal, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm done working for other people. I'm kind of unemployable now.
That happens to the best of us. All right, so the uniform. I definitely want to make sure people know the story about this. So, these guys show up, usually white shirt, black tie, white socks. So tell us more about where that came from.
Again, it's spite. I mean, what does everybody?
You're a very spiteful man.
Spite is actually a super powerful force because think about it. How often have you heard stories of founders who say, they told me I couldn't do it, it made me work twice as hard. They told me I would be an idiot in school, it made me work twice as hard. So I used to think that when people come to me for advice, that I would have to be positive and tell them how much I like their idea or find the good parts in there. That does no good. And frankly, it doesn't matter what I or anybody else think about your idea. In fact, if I'm going to, comment negatively on it, it's going to talk you out of your idea, then shame on you for giving up so easily. Now, actually, I focus on the negative. Because I figure, A, if I'm wrong and it pisses you off, and you're going to work twice as hard, then I've actually helped you. And two, I could be wrong anyway, And just because advice works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for anybody else.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, spite's a huge thing. On the uniforms and stuff like that, for my business, having to make house calls, you've got to work with what you have, which is you have to get to the job. You have to have some semblance of uniformity. And so I looked around and thought, okay, Best Buy has the yellow-blue shirt, or they had the blue-blue shirt. Blockbuster had yellow, Home Depot had orange, T-Mobile has pink. It's like all the colors were taken. So, and polo shirts, no offense to them, but like I just didn't want to bring another damn polo shirt into the world. Same thing with like vehicles. So whether you do an app or you make a product or a service, when you have no money for advertising or marketing, and I had no money when I started.
Yep.
So when you have no money for that, everything you do is advertising. So we're not talking about gimmicks here. I have to have uniforms, I have to have vehicles. So as long as I have to drive around, why should it be a Ford Fiesta? No offense to the Fiesta drivers. But you've got to use everything you can to somehow stand out from the crowd. The difference between a gimmick and something that lasts, a gimmick doesn't really have any integration with the business function. So we need uniforms, but it had a couple other benefits. How did I come up with the tie? Well, I can't put people in suit and ties. One, it costs too much to dry clean. Two, geeks don't really know how to tie ties.
Yeah.
And it was the only other option. It was either T-shirts and jeans, which is not professional enough.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching Apollo 13, and I'm like, NASA, oh my God. Like, you know, most people don't realize, but during the Apollo era when we landed on the moon, they essentially if you look under the old shots, they're all wearing short sleeve white shirts. So the key to innovation is to break the rules while obeying them at the same time. Breaking the rule means you stand out from the crowd and you're different. But to make it scalable, you have to obey the rule of scalability, cost. So those shirts, they buy them at JCPenney for $19.99, So that's a key. When you look at the Geekmobiles like the Beatles, the black and white paint job allows us to buy any vehicle, but apply the visual motif to any vehicle, so it gives us better purchasing power. The Beatles were the cheapest car in their class for insurance rates and also the safest car. So it saved on gas and insurance. So everything you see at Geek Squad was really thought out. I spent 8 years perfecting that before I even went to Best Buy. We spent another 4 years at Best Buy before we scaled it to 10,000 employees and then up to 25,000.
Wow,
So,
that's
and
great.
I think that's one of the reasons why it's lasted this long.
Awesome. Well, once again, we're taking your calls and your questions. We're spending a few minutes with Robert Stevens today. If you want to reach us, call 1-844-4FOUNDER, email help@founderline.com, or tweet at @founderline. So why don't we take a few questions? And
Sure.
Thanks for the background. Let's dive in here. It looks like we've got a bunch of emails and tweets. Let's see.
They better not be tech support questions, by the way.
Yeah. How do you fix your router?
You buy an Airport Express and you don't have to fix it.
Here's a tweet from Richard. What has been the biggest highlight of your career?
Boy, there have been a bunch of fun things. You know, like in 2004, when we scaled nationally, I got to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. And that was cool because,
Really?
you know, it was 3 years after 9/11. And, you know, there's still security there. But seeing the Geek Squad flag draped over that, that was pretty cool. But the thing I'm most proud of are the people that are there. You know, listen, it's one thing to have a vision for a business and be a good founder. But it's another thing to lead that company when there are 10 employees and everybody, whether it's your first bookkeeper, eventually you're going to outgrow people because their skill sets hit certain limits, including your own as a founder. And I didn't know where my limits were. And so I don't know if I'd be a good manager. It's one thing to like make house calls and be able to fix any computer problems. Another thing to deal with accounting, balance sheets, human resource issues. I didn't know if I even had the energy for that. And so
Were you a good manager?
I'd like to think I was, you know. I think I was better than I thought I'd be. And the best part is that I was worried that I wouldn't have the energy for it because it's hard enough to come up with great ideas, to stay on strategy, to recruit people. And people are messy and sticky. It's why so many technology companies want to just do everything online. Nobody wants to deal with people. But, you know, it's the hardest kind of leadership to do. And you're never perfect at it, but I enjoy it much more than I thought. And I think that's the hardest. If you really want to be a top leader and you want to grow your company, that usually is probably the most important thing. The CEO basically sets the vision and then has to recruit the executives, and that's it. So, I believe that like marketing is a tax you pay for being unremarkable. Hiring is a tax you pay. Training is a tax you pay for an unremarkable hiring process.
All right, awesome. Let's take an email. We have an email from Susan in San Francisco. Why are technology products so complicated? What can be done to fix this? It's a great question.
Yeah. One thing I learned when I was at Best Buy, because I thought the same thing, because I thought, well, if you want to buy a car, talk to a mechanic. If you want to design a great technology gadget or product, talk to a Geek Squad agent, because they've seen everything. And so I thought, if I could get inside Best Buy, I could help companies. Imagine if we took all 25,000 Geek Squad agents. And we do Dyson vacuum cleaners now, 4,000 laptops a week, when you take them into the Best Buy and they get repaired under warranty, like do all that stuff. What if we fed all that data back to the companies, help them design their products better, including the Kickstarter companies that are just starting out? And, I envision Geek Squad being support for those companies that don't want to build out a whole support force. Nest thermostats are great, but your grandmother's not going to install that herself, or a Bluetooth door lock and all the other cool Wi-Fi doorbells that are coming.
Yeah.
One answer is that the pace of innovation creates, again, another paradox, which is these engineering teams, in Asia and in the technology companies, they have to there are product release cycles, just like the Apple comes out, the iPhone comes out in the fall, and the iPad comes out in the summer, and iOS 8 every year. That creates a rhythm. And the problem is, unless the company is very, very skilled, especially with a CEO who knows how to create that team, they're under pressure to roll those products out, and they're already working on next year's model. They didn't even have time to write those manuals.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I think things are going to get better as we have better interoperability. If you watch the Apple Developer Conference this week, I think everybody was surprised at the amount of new interoperability that's going to be coming. So that's helped. The cloud helps, but as long as there's going to be innovation and new products, we're going to have some of that chaos. But I think Apple has shown the other companies that investing in design and reducing cost by reducing complexity for the consumer is a competitive advantage. So we're seeing things like Nest, or even Google, I think, has done a really good job in the last couple of years. Android definitely looks better than it did 2-3 years ago.
Yep. I watched the keynote, and one of the most impressive stats to me was around the OS penetration, right? When iOS releases a new OS, some very high percentage, I forget what the number was, it gets installed on people's phones. And I think by doing that and being successful at getting those phones upgraded on a regular basis, they're able to keep their costs down just because they're fixing stuff, they're moving on. Whereas I remember being a developer on the Android side, and just the fragmentation and the complexity around supporting 12 different OSs on 45 different pieces of hardware, it made life really tough as a developer, at least. So
and it makes it hard for a retailer. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, most people that are watching right now are probably like, "Oh my God, Geek Squad and Best Buy suck." But the reason Apple can do what they do is because they control the whole stack. But you bring anything non-Apple in a Genius bar, they wouldn't even know what the hell it is.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
A Geek Squad agent actually can handle a wider array. But it's like here's the problem Best Buy has. There's only so much service you can do, because the AC charger or the backlit screen on here is almost unique to this model, and so you can't stock these parts. So retail operations become shipping centers, and so that harms the retailer, it harms the manufacturer, it harms the consumer. It makes it. I can tell you that's why there aren't 20 Geek Squads. It's super, super hard. The customer sat score of Geek Squad, I don't think has changed actually in 10 years, even though Geek Squad's been there. The in-home is sky high, because it's just so hard to do that. And now you have your data on there and protecting all that. So it's part of the complexity. But this is where the battleground is, I think.
All right. Well, let's take another question. We have another email here from Samir in San Jose. What was the hardest situation you ever faced at Geek Squad or Best Buy, and how did you handle it? What do you think? Was it a people situation? Was it a?
It's always people situation in a service business.
I had a feeling.
I mean, we've had a few incidents. I mean, we had one where Geek Squad agent took photos off somebody's computer, and out of like tens of thousands of employees, it's super hard to control that. It's just like these stories of people going through somebody's luggage at the airline. Those days just suck, and that's why Uber's already experiencing this. Even off-duty Uber drivers, they report them as Uber drivers in the headlines. It's tough, and that's why it's why Travis wants to replace all Uber drivers with robots. But I'll give you. Everybody's always asked me. I actually had a great run at Best Buy. We got along great. I mean, listen, working at Best Buy is like being paid to work at like the best toy store ever. There's always new stuff coming out. You get it at a discount. There are a lot of fun events and stuff that we got to go to. The toughest thing was actually a detail most people don't know about. When we came to California, we had the black and white Geekmobiles. And I stole that from the police department because I thought nobody else would bother to do that. And it gave me a way to buy different vehicles but have a similar visual look. Well, Geekmobiles started getting pulled over by California Highway Patrol because they said, you're violating the law. The California statute actually doesn't say you can't have a black and white car. It says you cannot have any two contrasting colors like fender, door, fender. So you can't do green, purple, green.
Really?
That's the way the statute's written.
I see those cars all the time driving around.
And the CHP was cool about it. They're like, we like you guys, but if we let you do it, we got to let every crazy person in California do it. So this became a big PR thing, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing. People were sending in letters going, I cannot believe the California Highway Patrol is...
Don't they have better things to do, right?
Yeah, and so I told Best Buy, the legal department, and this is where becoming a big company, especially when you're public, becomes less fun.
Yeah.
I said, let's fight this.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we're not going to win. I said, I know we're not going to win, so let's lose with style. Schwarzenegger had just become governor. And I thought, he's a jock.
Slip there? I don't know.
He had just become a jock. I mean, he's a jock who became a governor. And I thought, jocks picking on geeks, the optics of this for PR, we'll have a blast, we'll lose, we'll take it to the California Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And we were going to hire Eric Estrada from Chips to do like a PSA on YouTube on like, apparently the California Highway Patrol is worried that the public can't tell the difference between a Geekmobile and a police car. Allow us to demonstrate and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's when it became like, I backed down because Best Buy was like, we're not doing this fight, we're not going to fight it. And it really kind of pissed me off. It was like, come on, you had like Richard Branson, or like my favorite is John Legere of T-Mobile. He's not just doing gimmicky stuff, he's changing prices, he's making it more friendly, he's poking a stick in the eye of Verizon and AT&T. That's the kind of leadership I like, because it's not just, again, for the PR gimmick. I think a CEO and a founder's job is occasionally to just break those rules, to give permission to people in the company to just think beyond, have a little fun, and to get the culture to think outside the bounds, So that kind of bummed me out. So I can tell you what, next time I'm encountered with that, I'm going all the way to the Supreme Court.
All right, great. Well, let's take a moment here. We need to thank our sponsors. So we couldn't do this show without the support of our two amazing sponsors, Orrick and Ustream. And I'd like to start with Ustream. We've been working with them since the show started. They're the reason you're able to watch this live today. In fact, I was just on the phone with them today. We're going to be doing some remote broadcasts from Europe this summer and working with them on trying to get the setup right. So, we met the CEO, Brad. He's been great, and the team there has helped us out on a number of occasions. If you're thinking about doing something related to streaming, whether you want to use it for your company, corporate meetings, or you want to do a broadcast of some sort from your home office or whatever it might be, you should check them out. You can go to ustream.tv, and I'm sure they'll take care of you in the same way that they've been taking care of us as well. I'd also like to thank Orrick, Mitch Zuklie, who I've known for a number of years, and the team over there. They're our lawyers, and worked with them on multiple companies in the past. I tell people when you're doing a startup, you want to surround yourself with great advisors. And one of the most important advisors you can work with is your lawyer. Not so much because they understand the law and they can keep you from getting arrested by the CHP or whatever it might be, but more because they've seen so many startups before, they've been through so many financings, so many acquisition conversations, so many partnerships, whatever it might be. They can tell you, you should try for this and be willing to fall back to this. Just the pattern recognition and the amount of data they have on similar situations to yours is just incredible. So find somebody who you really connect with, not so much because of their legal advice, which is definitely important and you want to have somebody great at that, but because they're going to be a great advisor to you. And I can speak very highly of the team over there. I've been working with them for a long time, and you couldn't do better. Go to Orrick.com to find out more. So once again, we're taking your calls and your questions, whatever it might be. You can call us at 1-844-4-FOUNDER. You can tweet to us. The Twitter handle is @FounderLine, or you can email help@founderline.com, and we'll try and answer your questions. So let's go back to the questions if we can. Let's see. We have an anonymous email from Palo Alto. How do you split time between technology and business? I think this is in a startup. Are you more passionate about technology or the business problem you are trying to solve? Interesting question.
Yeah, well, technology is a way to do things. It's not the thing, So that's why I say Geek Squad's not a technology company. So it's important to know, are you selling a drill or are you selling the hole in the wall? And so technology is a tool. Because there's new technologies and it's happening so fast, that's how we're getting all this stuff done. But at the end of the day, it is about the business, and what you're selling. Because the customer's not thinking about the technology. To them, they're just boarding the plane with the latest way to board the plane. And they don't want to think about it that way. And I think the best companies don't rely too much on the technology, or they make it invisible for the consumer. The other reason that's important is because, listen, when anybody can get Amazon server storage or prototype an Arduino board, then what makes you different than anybody else? If anybody can get access to a 3D printed coffee mug, or they can outsource manufacturing to China, at the end of the day, it's what can't be outsourced that you're doing. And that becomes how you use any of these technologies and how you run the business. And that's why I really advocate, no matter what business you're in, is to focus on all the other details, all the myriad things, even to run through all the experiences. How easy is it to pay your bill? Count the number of clicks, count the number of minutes it takes to do that, and look at the cost, and then benchmark that. Because if you really look at what's going on in any industry right now in terms of any disruption, it's all about the friction that's being removed. Square took a lot of friction out of paying with a credit card. Now they're taking payment, email, stuff like that. So look at your own friction in your experience, benchmark it against where you want to be and stuff like that. And then, I think spend a lot of time also just reading fiction and stuff that doesn't have anything to do with technology. If you just drink...
Why is that? What?
Because if you want to come up with great ideas, and no matter where you start with your idea, you're essentially constantly refounding your own company every 3 months. You're constantly re-examining processes. I don't just focus, by the way, on the business side for the consumer experience. I also focus on the employee experience. If you have developers, what's their development environment like? How easy is it for them to collaborate and talk to each other? I do believe culture is what happens when the founder is out of the room. And so, but the most important reason you shouldn't just drink, Twitter feeds and follow the same people as everybody else is because everybody else is reading those feeds. And Picasso said, good artists copy and great artists steal. The difference is copying is taking something from your own industry. But if you're running a car wash franchise or making pizzas or doing photo filtering, whatever, be careful where you draw your well of ideas from. Stealing means to take ideas from other disparate industries. I stole my uniforms from NASA. I stole my vehicle ideas from FedEx and UPS. The idea is vehicles as part of the branding. I stole my flat rate pricing from rapid oil change, which, the oil change business of the last 20 years, instead of hourly pricing, which gave me all sorts of advantages and helped me simplify the business. So almost every idea I have from Geek Squad never came from technology or other computer repair or tech support. It came from hotels, it came from restaurants, stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. So we've got another question here. It's an email from Sharon in San Francisco. Since, unlike the rest of Silicon Valley, you've had the opportunity to talk to women, in art and business, what are some of the things that venture capitalists can do to increase the number of women founders? I said because my screen shifted here and the question went away. But
good. I thought it was a really loaded question.
Yeah, no. So I realized as I was saying that. So what are some of the things that venture capitalists can do to increase the number of women founders? You're an expert on women. Successfully married for a long time, right?
I'll celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary this year. Yep, and I'm very close with my sister, and my daughter just got her driver's permit last week.
Oh, so wow!
I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I do have some experience. Well, with Geek Squad, just like with the tech industry, it has been a challenge to increase the ratio of female Geek Squad agents. I'm happy to report that it's probably double that, the average retail percentage in its increase, but it's still, I think, in the single or low double digits, nowhere near enough. But one thing that I did, when I was trying to hire female Geek Squad agents to address that, I just made sure that when I sent out my requests for hiring, I just, like the College of St. Catherine and St. Paul, I just post them on, campuses where I thought.
Is that an all-girl school? Or?
It's an all-girl campus, a very well-known one.
Okay.
So, you do things like that. I think you proactively reach out. You're being proactive with this show and reaching out. So where you share the information, I'd hang out with, to become more of an expert, I would hang out with, I just had lunch with Eileen Lee of Cowboy Ventures last week, and every time I talk to a female venture capitalist, I learn a lot more what they think about. So I think if you want to catch the fish, you got to go where the fish are. If you're looking for, Apple fanatics, there's a certain number of places you can find them. And if you want to, I think in terms of increasing the number of females in tech, I know less about that because with my daughter, I won't say I tried to influence her when she was young. She has a natural ability to fix things that just seems to be innate in her. But Lord, I tried to get her interested in Star Wars and I failed miserably. So,
wow,
despite all the best intentions,
kids
will emerge with their own personalities despite our best intentions. So I think you just increase the diversity of where you put out the call for help and make sure you, again, get out of that filter bubble and get out of your own area and go to areas. I always said I'd way rather have a Geek Squad article written about us in Good Housekeeping or some other journal instead of Wired magazine, because that's already appealing to people who probably already do it themselves versus hitting a crowd that isn't spending as much time in technology.
All right. Here's another one. This is from Nick in Mountain View, just down the street here. My company has an idea for a consumer product, but we're engineers, not salespeople. How do we make contact with retailers like Best Buy to get our product carried? How do we set the price? So, it doesn't have to be Best Buy. It could be anyone. It could be Amazon or anybody else.
Those are good questions. It's kind of a bummer because that's most of the reason people call me is to see if I know somebody at Best Buy.
Really? All the time? That's
well, everybody gets typecast, right? If you worked at Facebook, they're going to ping you for social media expertise, or can you get me a job at Facebook? So people call me up and they're like, hey, I have this idea for a product. Can you get me into Best Buy? That might have been more of a relevant question 10 years ago. But think about it, it's 2014. If you're launching a product, even if you could get it inside of Best Buy, is that the best place? Do you want to be just another Bluetooth speaker on the wall? Yeah. Do you want to be just another laptop being sold by people who may or may not be super passionate about it? Or would you maybe do a Kickstarter project? I think the era we're in now, and I think it's much better, is that you can have a voice, you can have your own TV show. You can film a full-length feature film with an iPhone. And so if I had a great idea for a product, I don't know that I'd go to Best Buy first. Because
what would you do? Let's say you're working with a team of engineers and you got this new widget, whatever it is.
Well, I'll answer the last two questions there. And that is, the second question was, how do we're not marketers. Again, I'm not a marketer. but we're all consumers. We all board planes. We all stand in line. We all hate being on hold. Great brands have a strong point of view, and they stand for something, and consumers can smell it a mile away with no advertising.
Yep.
It's not that I'm against advertising per se. I just think it's a tax you unnecessarily pay in absence of a killer product. So first of all, what problem are you solving? So the answer to marketing is don't try and be someone you're not. But as an engineer, somebody who can build from the ground up something from nothing with software and hardware, my recommendation is to do it not 2 times, but 10 times better than anybody's done it. Raise your bar so high that you'll never hit it. Aim for the moon. But even if you fail, you'll end up in the upper stratosphere. And then you'll find yourself having to do less marketing. And nobody trusts marketing anymore. We don't trust press releases. We don't trust any of this BS that corporations spew out.
Right.
We trust fuzzy YouTube videos because they're more honest and authentic. So don't try and be somebody you're not. Last question was, how do we price it? Well, ask yourself, if I'm the consumer for this thing, what problem are you addressing and solving? And try and solve it by the currently available means in the marketplace. I need a ride to the airport. What are my choices? I can walk, I can take the bus, use Google Maps, I can pay $2, I can take BART or the express train, I can use Uber, I can call a taxi. Again, count the number of steps each one of those take, count the number of clicks, count the number of minutes it takes, the total time, and what's the price. It's $2 via bus, $9 via Caltrain, $45 via Uber, and very quickly you'll find out how well did you nail it. And so that's...
Are you a fan of these, of the new, the Kickstarters and the Indiegogos? Like, you think that's a good strategy if somebody has a new technology product to go launch something there?
It's a good strategy. I think there's many variants that are coming out depending on your idea.
Yeah.
I bought a number of Kickstarter stuff. Now, if I were the CEO of Best Buy today, I told them before I left, I said, have a simple search engine on Kickstarter. If consumer electronics gadget achieves funding at this rate of ascension in this short amount of time, call them and be like, we'll take 10,000. And just, Best Buy should automatically be like the bell ringer on it. Like, oh, we just hit funding like an hour after Best Buy like put an order for 10,000. I mean, 20% of Best Buy stuff should be like crowd funded. Like another 20% should be designed by Best Buy employees who also have a lot of good opinions about what should happen. So I think it's an additional choice. It's not the choice for everybody. I also believe that sometimes for an idea, before you even have, Kickstarter rightly now has much more restrictions on like, you have to have a working prototype. You can't just make a bunch of promises and take funding.
Right.
But I also think it's okay that if you have vaporware and you have an idea and you want to find out whether there's even a market for it, to put up a sign-up sheet online saying, hey, we're thinking about doing this new fishbowl concept and click here if you want to be part of the early beta. You'll immediately get a bunch of email addresses and find out how hot or not you are. But I would say, I wouldn't assume that the old channels of distribution are necessarily the best ones. Not that you would never sell, but you go to Walmart or Amazon, look how Amazon's fighting with the book publishers right now. They're going to squeeze you on margin. Yeah, we'll promote your book on Kindle, but you're going to have to drop the price to 99 cents this week.
Yeah.
That's a tough call for each situation.
All right. Once again, if you want to reach us, you can call us 1-844-4FOUNDER. You can tweet to @FounderLine, or you can email us at help@founderline.com. So we have another email here from one of our regulars. 5 shows in, we have regulars, at least one. This is from Larry in Yuba City. How did you select your executive team, and what did you offer them to get them to come on board? Interesting.
When I said before that the best thing ever to happen to me is I had no money when I started, is it forces you to build things for yourself from scratch. It's not that you can scale all of that, but I do recommend a company, now you can pretty easily create your own software to solve the job you need done and build a lot of the stuff yourself. I design my own logo and all that kind of stuff, because later, when you do purchase the services of software developers, you've developed a better set of requirements that you want. You'll get more out of them, and you'll be better at describing it. Otherwise, you end up spending a lot of money on change fees later after you've hired somebody to do it, and then you end up changing it. So you may as well do version 1.0 yourself. So I had no money for executives. So, I mean, I built Geek Squad basically to have people who book the jobs and people who do the work. So I didn't have any executives. I just had people who answered the phone. So I had to figure out, how do I answer the phone with no advertising? Well, I have to make my cars really easy to stand out in traffic because they are moving around. And so I used, what if my customers were my advertising? Not just word of mouth, but I got a call from Ozzy Osbourne once when he was going through Minneapolis at Ozfest, and his computer was down, and it wasn't him, it was his manager. But his manager was about to manage the KISS tour, and I realized, oh my God, rock stars were the world's first telecommuters. So if I do their computer support, then my customers become advertising. Like jeweler to the stars on the red carpet at the Oscars and hairstylist to the stars. Yeah. Nobody had thought to do computer support to the stars. So then I figured out the concierges at the hotel are how you get the celebrities. So I call every concierge in every city and be like, I'll do free support for you. Just send me all your celebrities and I'll make you look like the rock star. And then Geek Squad has been the official tech support of the Rolling Stones, the last 8 U2 tours, did the Police reunion tour. Wow. So this idea that, anyway, how do I get my executives? The best recruiting is a killer mission. What do you think the waiting list is to begin an executive at Tesla? I mean, even I want to work at Tesla. When you have no money, then you realize, it took me a couple years to figure out, money is a motivator, but it's not the number one. Not everybody is motivated by money or power or fame, but nobody wants to lead a boring life. And one of the ways to attract people is to have that great mission. Our goal is to liberate technology for ordinary people that are afraid of technology, but they want the benefits. They don't want to be intimidated. Somebody dressed nice, it's going to show up on time and not talk down to them. And we're not going to cure cancer, but you might fix a laptop for a cancer researcher. We're not going to solve world peace, but you might recover a Word document for somebody at the United Nations. So you're going to be this close to solving world peace. This is the role you're going to play in curing cancer. And I'm telling you what, that was all it required. And the other thing too is that how you run the company. People want to learn from great leaders, and they want to have the freedom to, if they're that kind of person, to innovate. So how you run your company and the kind of culture you create becomes its own best advertising. Those Geekmobiles and those uniforms are not for the customers. Those are to attract people. And they also keep people out. There's a lot of people in the tech industry who are like, I'm not wearing a clip-on tie. It's become a wonderful litmus test for humility. You can't have an ego dressed like that. Yeah. And it's actually helped us keep humble. So the best recruiting is a killer mission.
All right.
And you don't have to be sending rockets to the space station. You can be a plumbing company. But to be the best plumbers in the world, to have the best pet food store in the world, you do not have to be a billion-dollar company. You don't have to go public. You can be a one sole proprietor. But don't do it half-ass and don't be mediocre at it.
I love it. So let's see. We've got another email here from Paul in San Carlos. What's your favorite recent technology product and why? Or if you have multiple, I'm sure you buy
I have everything.
It all. So what gets you excited that you've seen recently?
Well, I've had Sonos for a number of years, but I got the Play Bar installed, and I have to say, as somebody who worked at Best Buy, I had all the 7.1 surround sound systems.
Yep.
I really love the Sonos Play Bar. I think for the money, it is the best, and it's consistently just like the surround always works, and it's a good deal, and the software integration is excellent. I really like Wemo's home automation system. I think surprisingly from Belkin, who traditionally just made cheap cables, they've done an incredible job. Wemo software is intuitive. It works really well.
What do you use it for? Like controlling the lights and?
Yeah, just lights, and a couple other appliances. I have an older house, so it requires a neutral ground, and so I'm waiting. I have a bunch of light switches from Wemo, but I can't hook them up because my house is 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's that. But home automation is my favorite category because in a home theater, it costs about 10 grand before you can watch your first movie. But what I love about home automation is you can start with a single light switch in a dorm room, and people can hack and make things up, do things. So I love if this, then that, IFTTT. I think there's going to be a consumer version. I just got Smart Things. That's pretty good. Still a little technical. I think there's a big opportunity in Apple's HomeKit. They just uploaded the video. They have a private session called on HomeKit, which is the home automation integration standard for iOS. I watched the whole thing yesterday. It's pretty cool what they're going to do. They're going to make all this stuff talk to each other, even if these companies don't get along.
Really? All through iOS or through?
Yeah, they're gonna allow people to create their own independent hardware, but federate to a standard so that there might be times when your thermostat can tell things besides just the temperature. It can, like motion or whatever, and be used as part of a security system. So like Smart Things lets you use your Sonos as your alarm system speaker, so you can have an MP3 file of a dog barking and have it play on the backyard outdoor zone if it detects motion there. That's pretty cool. We've got two companies that are being put together that weren't there before. So, but I'm trying to think of other technology. I love my little pencil by 53, the little stylus that looks at the paper app. Yeah, that's pretty. It's a beautiful piece of engineering.
All right, let's move on. We got another one here from Pascal in Pleasanton. What technological waves do you see impacting Silicon Valley over the next 5 years that a new startup could take advantage of?
Well, I talked about home automation, which I think is huge, because if you thought the internet was big and you thought computers were big and then you thought mobile was 10 times bigger than that, well, the ability to connect everything else, from alarm systems to Wi-Fi doorbells to making all that work. There's not going to be room for everybody to become their own walled garden ecosystem, but there's plenty of room for like services just to hook this stuff up. If I started Geek Squad today, would I start a PC support company? No. Would I start a home automation setup business? Maybe. That's one area. Robotics is still a little too far out. I think wearable and stuff like that presents a lot of opportunity. I'll tell you one startup I've been trying to build, but I haven't been able to figure it out. I think it's the biggest trend and the biggest missing opportunity, but it's also one of the hardest, and that is self-scheduling. Why? When you go into Google Maps or Yelp, there's only two actions you can take. You can click a button to call a phone number, and who wants to call a business anymore? Or you can click a button to get driving directions. That's it. In Yelp, you can open up Open Table. Why hasn't Open Table forked their code and have Open Wash for car washes, Open Scape for landscaping? Why isn't there scheduling for everything else? Uber's done that with cars. The reason it isn't is because it's very hard to normalize the scheduling process flow in 3 clicks or less, and I think it's got to be 3 clicks or less. But boy, why these small and medium-sized businesses do not have a one-click schedule. I mean, from everything from home delivery to whatever. I mean, Instacart is fine for retailers, but I'm talking about like if I want to get my hair cut or a dental appointment. I'm not going to have 25 apps on my phone.
Well, you're starting to see some of that, like Style Seat for hair salons, and there seem to be some verticals going after
and
that.
HomeJoy, right. This is where I think Uber will make some kind of a play, because I don't see how consumers are not. I certainly also don't want to have 20 apps on my phone for scheduling. I don't know why Google Maps abandoned the Google Calendar self-scheduling API. Now, Square bought FreshBook, and Yelp bought SeatMe. And if I were Yelp, they are perfectly positioned to include a self-scheduling system as part of, hey, if you really maintain your Yelp listing and use us as a portal, we'll give you free scheduling. I believe that's where they're going to head. I don't know why they haven't moved on this much quicker. They are moving on it, but not as fast. That is a huge opportunity. Is what Square did for money, somebody's going to do for time.
All right, I like it. So here's another tweet. What do you hope to achieve in the future? So, you moved out to California. Pretty big move for a family, right? To come out here from the Midwest. What's next? What are you going to do other than hang out and have fun?
Listen, I did something that, in one argument you could say I wasted 10 years at Best Buy, but I did it, one, because I cared about my baby. I didn't want Geek Squad to just die on the table, so I wanted to make sure it was going to not just be abandoned. I wanted to make sure it was okay. I wanted to make sure the employees, did fine. I wanted to learn what it's like, and now I learned my lesson, which is that any of you could run a Fortune 100 company. I really believe that. So I'm a service person, and I believe everybody's in the service business now.
Yeah.
Because when anything can be made in China, then it's the experience you offer, whether it's your billing experience or your order experience or your return experience or any part of even opening the box and all that kind of stuff. So I'm unemployable. I can't do any more big companies. I just don't have it in me. I can't go to Apple because they're dealing enough without the founder, and there's that. But so I've got to start a company. I have no choice. So my youngest will go to college in 2 years. So in 2 years, I'm going to be under the age of 50, no kids in the house. I'm going to be able to go back to when I was 22 and I can work 20 hours a day. I'm going to be dangerous as hell because I have bootstrapping experience and I've been there in the Fortune 50 and lived to tell about it. So watch out, because I dare you to compete against me. So I've got some ideas. I have a non-compete with Best Buy that lasts until April of 2015. So
let me mark down my calendar.
I'm thinking about doing a concept, but I can't actually sell anything. So I'm thinking about doing a retail concept and just having a clock at the back, and it's my non-compete countdown clock, So April 1st, 2015.
And then the big reveal with, when the time
I'm trying
comes.
to figure out, legally, I can't compete with them, but could I talk about it? Could I launch a website? I'm thinking about it. There's so many things that can be built. I'm being picky as hell because the bar is really high and it gets higher, so I'm taking my time. But I'll always be in some area where technology, service, culture, and brands. I love brands. I love service. I like helping people. And I also like helping employees. I want to create a culture because, the real mark of a founder is how well it works when the founder leaves, fires, it gets kicked out. I think Apple's doing way better than a lot of people thought they would at this point. And it's a testament to Tim Cook and Steve Jobs. And, that's something a founder should think about is, if you do a really good job, it should run better when you're gone.
Yeah, it's been impressive what they've been able to pull off. Certainly the foundation was there, but what I was struck by this week was just the quantity of things that they were coming out with that they talked about in the keynote, and they couldn't even get to everything, right? It felt to me like the most jam-packed keynote in a long time, and I don't know if that's a strategic change or that just happened to be the case this time. But
I think that company is doing the same thing they've always been doing, which is their goal, unlike Google, is to sell stuff. And they work really hard on design. And unless you focus on it, you're not going to really beat them on it that much. But I also felt like their thing wasn't rushed. I felt like Tim Cook's leadership style was there. Steve is no longer like the ghost in the room, because that's also going to kill them if they try and do that. They just have to be, even if Tim Cook is gone, even if they have the worst CEO in the world, it's really hard to kill a company's culture. Because anybody at the company at any one time can go back in its history and look in the cobwebs and the archives and saying, we used to stand for this, why don't we do that? So no matter how far any company falls or strays from the path, so that's, again, the things the founder does, the rituals they put in place, the silly little gimmicks they've done, or the pranks they've played, those all leave a trail of clues for the following generations, My goal has always been to kind of fake my own death with Geek Squad so that I could still be alive but not have the culture rely on me. So, I'm not really interested in competing against anything Geek Squad ever did. I'm interested in going, now what can be built? And, there's no limit.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. But Robert, thank you so much for joining us. If you want, you can follow Robert on Twitter. His handle is rstevens, RSTEPHENS. And tune in next week for another episode of FounderLine. Our guest will be Ariel Poehler. Ariel is a repeat entrepreneur who I've known for a number of years back in his Topica days, and has gone on to invest in a number of great companies. So I'm sure you'll learn a lot. That's next Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you once again to our fantastic sponsors, Orrick and Ustream. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @FounderLine. You can send us questions during the week if you want, help@founderline.com, or tweet to us if you want. You can also go to our website and you can subscribe to updates. We'll send you a weekly email just with information on the past shows and upcoming shows. And we also now have a podcast you can go check out on iTunes if you'd like. Thanks for watching. Here's to the crazy ones, and we'll see you again next week.